Follow Famous and Gravy on the Wondery app or wherever you get your podcasts. You can listen to Famous and Gravy early and ad-free now by joining Wondery Plus in the Wondery app, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify.
Craving your next action-packed adventure? Audible delivers thrills of every kind on your command, like Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir, where a lone astronaut must save humanity from extinction, narrated with stunning intensity by Ray Porter. From electrifying suspense and daring quest to spine-tingling horror and romance in far-off realms, unleash your adventurous side with gripping titles that'll keep you guessing. Discover exclusive Audible originals, hotly anticipated new releases, and must-listen bestsellers that hook you from the first minute. Because Audible knows there's no greater thrill than the one that speaks to you. Discover what lies beyond the edge of your seat. Start your free 30-day trial at audible.com/WonderyUS. That's audible.com/WonderyUS.
Mochi Health is here to help you start your weight loss journey with caring, personalized support. Meet one-on-one with board-certified obesity doctors and registered dietitians who truly listen and understand your unique needs. Eligible patients can access affordable GLP-1 medications delivered right to their door each month. No insurance? No problem. Mochi Health accepts FSA and HSA, making care accessible and affordable. And with 24/7 customer service, you'll never feel alone on your path to better health. Get started with Mochi Health today. Take the free quiz at joinmochi.com and use code AUDIO40 at checkout for $40 off your first month of membership. That's joinmochi.com with promo code AUDIO40.
This is Famous and Gravy, biographies from a different point of view. To participate in our opening quiz, email us at hello@famousandgravy.com. And now, here's the quiz to reveal today's dead celebrity.
This person died 2018, age 76. She became pregnant, dropped out of high school, and had a child 2 months before her 13th birthday.
Well, that's awful.
It's young. It's young.
No idea.
This sounds like might be a musician of some kind.
She started teaching herself to play the piano before she was 10, picking up songs from the radio.
Ah, I was right. We are talking about a musician.
How about Doris Day?
Doris Day?
Not Doris Day. Good guess. She's somebody we've been thinking about.
Okay.
In 1969, she dropped her husband as manager and eventually filed restraining orders against him. She also went through a period of heavy drinking before getting sober in the 1970s.
Tina Turner?
It's kind of going down the Tina Turner, but this is, one, you've already done the show, and two, that's not who it is.
Whitney Houston.
Not Whitney Houston, although you're honing in. In 2010, Rolling Stone magazine put her at the top of its greatest singers of all time.
Oh my goodness, it's on the tip of my tongue. Oh my goodness.
That's my problem, is I can never remember these singers.
Yeah. Her music defined a modern female archetype. Sensual and strong, long-suffering, but ultimately indomitable, loving, but not to be taken for granted.
Aretha Franklin?
Oh, is that Aretha Franklin?
Aretha Franklin!
Today's dead celebrity is Aretha Franklin.
Of all the songs that you do, is there one that you see as your signature?
3, Respect, Natural Woman, and I Never Loved a Man.
Is that because of public perception, or is that Aretha's 3 favorites?
It has to do with the public enthusiasm surrounding those songs, and sure, they're 3 of my favorites.
What did the songs say to you, Respect?
Give me my props. Everyone should have respect, be respected, give respect.
Welcome to Famous and Gravy. I'm Michael Osborne.
And my name is Matt Anderson.
And on this show, we choose a famous figure who died in the 21st century, and we take a totally different approach to their biography. What didn't we know? What could we not see clearly? And what does a celebrity's life story teach us about ourselves? Today, Aretha Franklin, died 2018, age 76. Okay, so Maddie and I went to college together, and we've partnered together on a number of different podcasts. Most of those shows focus on the child welfare space. There's kind of three reasons I brought you on. First, you, more than most other white people I know, have really looked into issues surrounding race and equity. This is just such an essential lens for understanding the child welfare system as it exists today. That may or may not come out in this episode, but it is one way in which I value our friendship. A second reason is that once upon a time you were a therapist, and there is some complicated stuff in the Aretha Franklin story. You're also a family advocate. You support families, and I think you have a lot of grace and compassion for understanding the complexity and messiness that comes with family. Aretha is an episode that's kind of been looming. I knew it was going to be hard. And so one of the things I look for in my friendships these days is the ability to talk about spirituality. That's a territory where you and I have a lot of great conversation. So that's why you're here.
I thought I was here because I'm a longtime listener of Famous and Gravy. And,
No, reason number 4.
Guest.
Reason number 4.
Yeah, I think you're pulling on some threads that are core to who I am and core to the work that I do, but also some threads that run through our friendship. It is a complicated episode and life story to tell, and this will be a good one for us to dive into.
All right, let's get right to it. Category 1, grading the first line of their obituary. Aretha Franklin, universally acclaimed as the Queen of Soul and one of America's greatest singers in any style, died on Thursday at her home in Detroit. She was 76. Okay, initial reactions, Matt.
What struck me when I first read this is how short it is.
Yeah.
And it's not a complicated obit.
I had the same reaction. How could you not? There's not that much said here. They are high compliments. Queen of Soul and one of America's greatest singers in any style. If there's one phrase that kind of pops out to me, it's that, because she did transcend genres and categories, gospel and pop and soul, whatever. But yes, all of that said, very brief. Did you feel like this was a cop-out?
Okay, so here's the deal. You know that on the search for the world's greatest chocolate chip cookie.
Yeah, this is a thing that you post on social media all the time. Every other time I open an app, I see a picture of you holding up a cookie with a big smile on your face. Yeah.
So all over the world or anywhere I go, I'm always sampling, rating, reviewing chocolate chip cookies, right? And I'm an incredibly tough grader, right? So of all the cookies I've rated, there are very few 8s, almost no 9s.
Have you ever given out a 10?
No, there is no such thing.
Okay.
At least not yet, anyway.
Oh, great. So this is the mentality you're bringing to the first line?
This is what I'm bringing to the first line of the obituary. And I'm going to make a case that this is a 10.
Okay. Wow.
And because I'm a regular listener, I assumed that you were going to go with a maybe lower-ish score.
I'm pulled in that direction.
And I kind of was too.
Yeah.
But here's the deal. So I want to make a case for a 10.
All right.
And it's a case based on the simplicity. I really value and appreciate simplicity.
Yeah.
And there's really just 3 parts to this whole obit. So universally acclaimed, which I read as indisputable.
Yeah, I agree with that, actually. I overlooked that initially, but you're right to call attention to it. And it's actually sort of understated what high praise that is.
It's super high praise because I read it as it's almost fact, right?
Yeah.
So then the next thing that shows up is Queen of Soul, which is, often how she's recognized. And so, of course, that has to be in there, and it is. It means that she owns a genre of music.
Yeah. You would actually be hard-pressed to argue with that.
Yeah, it's sort of like when you're the queen of or the king of, it's in perpetuity.
Yeah, okay.
And so I really like that, the universally acclaimed Queen of Soul. It's well, what else do you really need to say about somebody's life and legacy and impact that they've had?
You're making a persuasive case here.
And then it goes on to say the greatest in any style. And what I like about that is not the greatest, because we've already made that point, but the greatest in any style means now she transcends across musical genres and maybe even the arts in general.
I mean, I think that, and we'll get into it as we go, there is a sort of, I don't mean this in a religious sense, but touched by God quality to her talent. You see this in music. It almost seems to come from deep time or the universe in some sense. And she's absolutely somebody who that idea applies to.
Yeah, I mean, so that's kind of my case for the perfect 10 is there's this singularity of this obit as a representation of the singularity of her life. What else do you really need to say? Even though it feels like something is missing.
The thing it may be missing to me that I'm still wanting here is a kind of hook. Am I now intrigued to read the rest of the obit. And maybe the hook here is in the understatement.
Can you back it up now?
Yeah.
You've said a lot. If I keep reading, are the facts there?
Well, and this is the thing that's going to come out over the course of the conversation, is that her talent is not in question. Her story is super complicated. Are we reading the rest of the obituary because we want to understand the story or the talent? Because in my mind, those are almost two different things. And I'm not sure anybody ever can explain the talent. I think that you can come to a better understanding around the personality.
If I were to score this really, really low, which I was tempted to do, it's because it's missing the story of her life, the human side of who she was as a woman, as a daughter, as a mother, as a black woman, as a
pop culture figure, as somebody who inspired, a generation of female artists in particular.
And that part of her life is complicated, as we're going to get into. So I was like, this is a 10 or it's a 2.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And here's the thing: should complicated information be introduced in the first line of the obituary? Sometimes there's a case for some hint of that here, and there is no hint of that in the first line of the obituary. So I am docking it a point for that reason. It gets a 9. It is not a perfect cookie in my mind.
It's not salty enough.
It's not exactly. It's not salty enough. It's exactly the right way of putting it. But overall, I'm very persuaded by your case, so I'm giving it a 9. And are you giving it a 10? Are we going with that?
I'm going to stick with the lens that I brought, the simplicity, but it could use salt.
Point taken. Okay. Excellent. Category 2, 5 things I love about you. Here, Maddie and I will develop a list of 5 things that offer a different angle on who this person was and how they lived. I feel like we need to set the stage here, but before we get into it, this is a different kind of episode for a few reasons. One is that there is a major divergence between the story Aretha wants to tell about herself and the information about her life that's available. And this is really well embodied in this book by David Ritz.
Yeah, and there's really 2 books, right?
Right. So here's the quick synopsis. David Ritz is a longtime ghostwriter for a number of very famous people in the entertainment industry, and usually his name is not on the book. He's done books on Ray Charles, Willie Nelson, Don Rickles, Lenny Kravitz, Marvin Gaye, and on and on. In the late 90s, he co-wrote a book with Aretha called From These Roots, which was her autobiography. But he felt unsettled about it, and he was always interested in a follow-up book.
It was one of the happiest moments of my professional life when she told me, yes, you can do the book. I was jumping out of my skin, man. I was up for nights. And then everybody told me, like Jerry and her brothers, and they all told me, you aren't going to sort of get anywhere. She's got this wall built around her. But I was arrogant. My arrogance was, I'm going to be so charming and so sweet. I'm going to get the intimacy. Because to me, these books are all about intimacy. And I did not make a dent in her armor. I didn't get to the heart of the story.
Hey, let me actually quote from the book here, because I think he does a good job of describing it. He says to her, when I mentioned the possibility of my writing an independent biography, she said, as long as I can approve it before it's published. Then he said, then it wouldn't be independent. She said, why should it be independent? So I can tell the story from my point of view. But it's not your story, it's mine. You're an important historical figure, Aretha. Others will inevitably come along to tell your story. That's the blessing and burden of being a public figure. More burden than blessing, she says. He then goes on to describe how he felt compelled to write this biography because he felt like he had a front row seat and a lot of information and key critical sources, including some of her family members, to contribute to this. So he does write this second biography called Respect, which does not have her approval. She dies without ever talking to him again. And he puts his name on it. This was an unusual move for the ghostwriter. I actually reached out to David and had sort of brief exchange with him. We weren't able to connect before the interview. That says something about her relationship to her own story. She is somebody who is notoriously sort of everybody who's tried to interview her has had this experience. So I don't think there's going to be as much interview tape in this episode of Famous and Gravy as there sometimes is. It's one of many challenges around her biography.
So what you just read from him, more burden than blessing, that is an Aretha Franklin direct quote.
Correct. Her relationship to her public life is a conflict almost from the beginning. Since it is a little harder, why don't I kick us off in the 5 things I love about you? So the first thing I wanted to do with this episode was really make sure I am trying to look for the things that I can relate to and that I love. So My thing number one is the Forrest Gump Award for showing up everywhere, especially when it mattered. So part of this is Aretha was kind of notorious for having concert dates and then not showing up. She's a little flaky, right? However, there are some enormously big moments in American history that kind of remind me a little of Forrest Gump, where she's present. She sings at MLK's funeral. Her father was very close with MLK, and Aretha Franklin is very involved in the civil rights movement. She also sang at Obama's inauguration and brought the new president to tears. That was not the only time she sang at an inauguration. She was there for Bill Clinton and for Jimmy Carter. And then the other one I would point to is when she filled in for Pavarotti at the Grammys in 1998. And like they needed a opera singer and she stepped in and killed it. When there's a rise to the occasion moment, she's there. And when it really mattered, she showed up. That was not easy for her sometimes. This is also a theme in her earlier work, that there were times when her father would ask her to participate in a civic organization or in a fundraiser, and her husband would say, yeah, well, we got this paid gig over here, and she would choose the cause. If I'm thinking about how I relate to that, you know, sometimes I want to go to the party and not to the funeral.
And I can relate to that too. Although, isn't there the burden and blessing? Isn't there sort of a shadow side or an other side of the coin with so much of what we're going to get into? Where she didn't show up was famously Whitney Houston's funeral.
Yeah. No, look, just about everything we have to say about why we love Aretha Franklin, there's almost always going to be a counter case. Her ego and her diva qualities got in her own way a lot. But I'm going to give her this award anyway.
I think so too. Okay, so my number 2 is the GOAT, the greatest of all time. You know, maybe it's just the social media thing is like we're throwing around the GOAT all the time. And so it's one of those things that's really lost its meaning. But there are the GOATs, and Aretha Franklin is a GOAT. So we have the GOATs in different categories, right? In sports, it comes up a lot. Michael Jordan is the GOAT of basketball.
Right, Tom Brady.
Tom Brady, exactly. Yeah. When it comes to music, Aretha Franklin is the GOAT. Rolling Stone magazine put out their greatest song of all time lists, and in 2024, she was number 1. Respect by Aretha Franklin is the number 1 greatest song of all time, according to Rolling Stone in 2024, right? So there's that, right? Plus and we'll probably get into this, she's won every single award and received every single recognition that you can get. But the reason I love this about Aretha Franklin is that, in this, you talked about like touched by God. Mm-hmm. I love greatness in people. You know, as much as I dislike Tom Brady as a Steelers fan,
right?
If he has that gift and there is greatness within him, then I want to see that greatness expressed. I want to see it come to its full fruition.
Yeah.
The reason I went with this as what I love about Aretha Franklin is that she expressed her greatness to its full fruition.
That's really good, Maddie. I knew you were going to bring in a sports metaphor somewhere. All right, number 2, the GOAT. All right, number 3, I'm going to say she carried the church with her. I want to introduce a little bit more biographical information. So she was raised in the church. Her father was a Baptist preacher who eventually took the family to Detroit. He was also, as we said earlier, a civil rights leader. He's a fascinating character in his own right. There's biographies written about him. He was friends both with the civil rights leaders of the 50s and 60s, but also the musicians in almost every category. You know, Smokey Robinson and Sam Cooke was around. And there's all these incredible figures.
My dad really appreciated music. He appreciated gifted artists, as I said, and he never tried to limit us in any way with respect to music or anything like that. Art Tatum was often a visitor in our home. Oscar Peterson, Arthur Price, Mahalia Jackson, of course James, and he loved Sam Cooke. And he just really very broadly appreciated one's artistry when they were truly gifted and really good.
Okay. When you look over the great expanse of her career, for me, one of the pinnacle moments is Amazing Grace. This album and a movie, it's kind of when she's at the peak of her powers with Atlantic Records. She films and records in a church in Southern California, and it is, to this day, to your GOAT point, the greatest selling gospel album of all time. The documentary is wonderful. She is radiant, and I do think that she was a product of the church, that she ultimately understood her purpose in life through the lens of a relationship with a higher power of her understanding. She, I think, is flawed in the way she carries that with her, but I do think that that is a core part of who she is. We talk on Famous and Gravy sometimes about this idea of an upward staircase. When you look at her life, one of the things that's really hard to be at peace with is the last few years look pretty sad. They look pretty lonely. She's reasonably isolated. And I don't know if when we use that phrase on this show, it has to be because that's how the story ends. That's not how it ended with her. On the other hand, I do think that there is something important about a commitment to a belief system that is expressed both in your humanity and absolutely in your art. And more than anything, that's the thing I think that I see in her is an attempt, sometimes successful, sometimes flawed, to connect with a higher power through her creativity. So, carry the church with her is my thing number 3.
I like it.
All right, so what do you got for number 4?
Yeah, so my number 4 is The Queen of Kings.
All right.
So, there's the King of Queens TV show.
Yeah.
So a little bit of a riff on that title. But you think about Aretha Franklin and the era in which she grew up. Grew up in the 40s, 50s. Her music career took off in the 60s and at a young age, right?
Yeah.
So she comes into her own as an artist, as a young Black woman in America in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. That is not an easy thing to do, right? I mean, she's coming up,
at a real hot flash moment. Yeah.
Right, exactly. And even before women's liberation, women's rights, the rights of African Americans, like she was up against a lot. Let's just say that. A very cruel, unjust world was facing her. And yet still, she becomes the Queen of Kings, meaning that she's the Queen of Soul. There's 4 people. The Queen of Soul, Aretha Franklin. The King of Soul, James Brown. The King of Rock, Elvis Presley. The King of Pop, Michael Jackson. Everybody knows it's Aretha, James, Elvis, and Michael.
Yeah.
And so she's the queen among all these kings, right?
Ah.
As a young Black woman pushing through all kinds of barriers and resistance. And American society didn't want a young Black woman to be successful in the 60s. And yet, here she is, the Queen of Soul. And so to use the word respect again, I mean, I think we give her respect here and the appreciation for what she accomplished.
I think we should talk for a second about the song. One thing I don't think I had thought very much about until I got into the research of this, there is a kind of analogy with Blowin' in the Wind. Bob Dylan writes that song and it sort of gets adopted by the civil rights movement. Respect is a song that gets adopted by a lot of political movements, certainly civil rights, women's liberation, to some extent LGBT rights at the time. And, when she's asked about it, she's like, it's not even her song. Otis Redding wrote it.
What did this song mean to you when you sang it? I mean, really part of the backdrop of the song, it was a hit during the civil rights movement. And I think, respect had a lot of meanings.
Yes, in later times it was picked up as a battle cry by the civil rights movement. But when I recorded it, it was pretty much a male-female kind of thing, and more in a general sense from person to person. I'm going to give you respect, and I'd like to have that respect back, or I expect respect to be given back.
The original version was a perspective of a man and a woman, and her version of it is a woman to a man. There's something about that cat's out of the bag and sort of comes to take on meaning that maybe was not even the original intention.
Yeah.
I love that, though. Queen of Kings. That's very clever, Maddie. All right. Let me go with number 5 here. I'm going to make this one brief. She found a nice thing to say. So this is basically, I don't know if you've seen this clip of when she's asked about some of the other divas. It's like in the mid-20 teens. She is frequently asked to comment on younger female artists. She's actually kind of known for her feuds and rivalries. You mentioned Whitney Houston. So it's true with Barbra Streisand. Kind of true with everybody. She's got this competitive gene. But she is at least a little bit diplomatic, and she found a nice thing to say.
I want to just sort of throw out a few names of divas instead of get your one-word reaction, instead of get your impression of various singers. So when I say the name Adele, what comes to mind?
Young singer, good singer.
Alicia Keys.
Young performer, good writer, producer.
Taylor Swift.
Okay, great gowns, beautiful gowns.
Great gowns, beautiful gowns. Okay, let's recap. So, number 1, I said Forrest Gump Award for showing up everywhere, especially when it mattered. Number 2, you said the GOAT. Number 3, I went with she carried the church with her. Number 4, you said the Queen of Kings. Yeah, good one. And then number 5, she found a nice thing to say. Okay, let's take a break.
Why are there ridges on Reese's peanut butter cups? Probably so they never slip from her hands. Could you imagine? I'd lose it. Luckily, Reese's thought about that. Wonder what else they think about. Probably chocolate and peanut butter.
Claude is the AI assistant from Anthropic that millions of people have turned to just because it feels different. We've all tried AIs that come across a little robotic. But Claude gets it when it comes to empathy and emotional intelligence. That's why Claude has become the if you know companion for tasks like vision boarding, self-reflection, planning a move to a new city, plotting out scenarios for a big life decision, and more. Give Claude a try for free at Claude.com. That's CLAUDE.com. And let us know how you feel the difference.
Category 3. One love. In this category, Maddie and I will each choose one word or phrase that characterizes this person's loving relationships. First, we will review the family life data. Aretha was married twice. The first marriage was to Ted White from 1961 to 69. Aretha was 19 when they got married, divorced in 27. He was also her manager, and the relationship is widely described as turbulent and abusive. Ted had been, among other things, a pimp in Detroit. There's some interesting stuff in the biography about like understanding that, but it's an important point. The second marriage was to Glenn Turman, 1978 to 1984. Aretha was 36. They were divorced at 42. They remained friendly after the divorce. If you're wondering who this guy is, he actually played Mayor Clarence Royce in The Wire. All right, children. There are 4 sons. The first 2 were largely raised by Aretha's grandmother and sister. The first child was born when she was just shy of her 13th birthday. Her second son was born when she was 15. So she was sexually active at a very young age. The book does a good job of actually sort of putting that into context. I might read something from that. There's a woman named Ruth Bowen who was a promoter, who was a business relationship with Aretha, and she says, "You're wanting to know if Aretha was promiscuous? Well, it was a promiscuous culture. She was a product of that culture. She was a child prodigy of that culture, and prodigies tend to feel big-time entitlement. I think that's true of everyone from Mickey Rooney to Julie Garland to Elizabeth Taylor to Dinah Washington. Their gifts are so big they feel as though they have the right to do what they want, especially in the sexual arena. Beginning at a young age, they also have to work very hard. That distinguishes them from other kids. They know they're special. All that rigorous traveling, all those performances, all that money they're making for their parents or their sponsors, it all makes them feel that they deserve any treat that comes their way." Then there's a passage from Etta James where she says, Etta James, who was a contemporary, said, "I didn't go through the usual growing up stages. One day I was a child, the next day a grown woman. It was strange. We were thrown into a world of too much excitement where we were overstimulated way too soon." The chapter in this book is called The Sex Circus. And Ray Charles comments on just the kind of, it sounds like orgies happening in the traveling music circles. Like, this is statutory rape, right? A 12-year-old girl has a child. I don't think you need to say anything else. Like, it's important information, and it's an important thing to understand about her. I think it's also really important to say she has these falling outs with her siblings. They leave each other and come together a lot, but there's a lot of sibling rivalry. She was very close with her father. Everybody kind of agrees Aretha was his favorite. Her mother, which we haven't talked about, and her father split at a young age. There's some reports that mother abandoned her. That's not true, but her mother was in her life, but ended up dying when she was very young. Okay, that's a lot, but you kind of have to understand all that early childhood stuff.
Yeah. Okay, so where I went was with a phrase that we've talked a lot about, actually. So the phrase is motherless daughter.
Yeah.
So
shout out to Cordelia.
Yeah, so our friend Cordelia Cranshaw coined this phrase, motherless daughter, and so essentially an experience of complicated, strained, maybe even absent relationships between mother and daughter, or really more generally between parent and child.
Yeah.
Right. So this motherless daughter experience is probably far more common than we would think, far more relatable. I can relate to it. And it's certainly a formative experience for Aretha that carries throughout her life and throughout her love life, her family life. And so you mentioned some of this, but her parents separate at a really young age and her mom moved away.
It's at a time where a single father raising a family was unusual.
Right. Which is a little bit of like an alienating kind of experience for a young child to say, my mom's not here, or bring your mom to school day, or whatever the case may be.
Right.
At a very early age, she's having this experience, and then her mom dies when Aretha's 10 years old.
Yeah. And she's looking for mother figures, and you can see that. And her father, there's a lot to love about her father. He's also a ladies' man, and some relationships are appropriate, some are inappropriate. And there are women in his life who Aretha attaches to who are kind of in and out too. There's a void.
And you wonder about, so loses her mom at 10 years old. She's a child at 12 years old.
Yeah.
And becomes a mother at 12 years old or 13 years old, and becomes a mother again at 15 when she's still a child without a mother. And I don't know. I mean, are you prepared to be a mother at the age of 12 or 13?
Yeah.
That's not the normal kind of developmental experience, right? So she becomes a mother at 12. She becomes a mother again at 15. She becomes a recording artist very shortly after that. By 18, she's kind of a big deal.
Yeah.
So she's not raising her children. And her grandmother is largely raising her children. So now her children are having a motherless child kind of experience. What I want to add to this, because there's a lot of loss, there's a lot of shadow side to that part of her
and there's a lot of like
experience.
trying to fill a void, and there's a lot of seeking validation in her relationships that I think helps you understand her.
And on the flip side of that, right, there's a lot of strength and resilience to be appreciated and to be respected. And the way that Aretha has been able to move through those early childhood experiences, incredibly adverse childhood experiences that can lead to a life not fulfilled, a life of a lot of pain and suffering. And while perhaps she did have a lot of difficult experiences throughout her life, the greatness within her was fulfilled.
Yeah.
And she was able to persevere through this. And so I think there's a lot to be taken away from the lesson that her life is to maybe turn adversity into opportunity. I don't know.
Yeah.
Again, shout out to Cordelia and this idea, this concept of motherless daughter, because I think it does a lot to help understand where Aretha's coming from.
Totally. And I do think like the simple fact of her life is some of her own childish desires, and I would say even more, the forces pulling her in. She is forced into adulthood prematurely. If you want to understand why she sometimes seems like an ice queen, who you cannot seem to get at the root of, there's a lot of early childhood trauma that creates a kind of insurmountable wall around her heart. And that some of what she's doing as an adult is trying to find validation through professional success. My read on her is she finds some of that wanting. That void, when it's created in you at a young age, it's a God-sized hole. You sort of see that play out in her life.
Yeah.
Here's what I got.
Okay.
When you read her biography, one of the things that's almost funny is Jet magazine is often her kind of little pawn. Anytime she wants to put out a happy story about who she is and how great she's doing and what fairy tale life she's living, she calls up a journalist at Jet magazine and they basically copy, paste, and print it. So I started thinking about Jet as a publication, and then I started thinking a little bit more about this idea that she is propelled, rocketed, catapulted into womanhood prematurely. So my word or phrase is private jet.
Yeah.
Another part of this is that it's also playing a little bit on her fear of flying. She has a terrifying experience on an airplane, and she never gets on an airplane again in the second half of her life. One of the reasons she's not on tour and isn't able to make certain dates, some of it is her depression, and some of it is that transportation is an issue. So private jet speaks to both those things, but more I'm going for the metaphor here. I do see her as isolated, ultimately. I do see some of those things I was saying a second ago of somebody looking for forms of validation and fulfillment. What I imagine is very hard for her is that she has an ability through her voice and through her music to reach a level of musical excellence and ecstasy where she feels it and everybody around her feels it. What's confusing is that she cannot seem to introduce that idea into anything else in her life for the most part. The ability to complete the emotional cycle and the creative cycle exists in her music and in not a lot of other places. That kind of looks like a jet airplane on autopilot, private and a little alone. So private jet.
Yeah, I like it.
I think another key thing that just should be called out. Okay, so she has a complicated marriage with Ted. I mean, there's some comparisons with Ike Turner. He did, in some ways, tee up her career. There came a point where it was an abusive relationship and she had to get the hell out of it. But that marriage kind of peters on for a while. And it is in place when she signs with Columbia, where she doesn't experience commercial success. And then it's also in place when she finally signs with Atlantic, which is where she has her breakout albums and Jerry Wexler and so forth. That's where we get Respect and Think and Natural Woman and, you know, all these hits. There's a moment where there's about to be a profile of her in Time magazine, and she thinks like, oh, you make it to the cover of Time magazine, what a rival moment. And it turns out to be almost a hit piece. Her father is portrayed in very unflattering light. Ted is portrayed in very unflattering light. There's some things that in there are maybe mistruths or some that's like, oh, that's kind of fair, but God, this is not a happy story. I think from then on, she had an adversarial relationship with the media. I think as soon as she felt betrayed by Time magazine, she never felt comfortable with a journalist ever again. Maybe rightly so, but it is like the moment where, if we're talking about an icy wall around the interior of Aretha Franklin, that's the moment where we drop it from 30 degrees to 20 degrees.
Yeah. And I think, you know, we just have to make note anyway of the burden that a black woman carries in America.
Yeah. At a moment of change and fluidity, too, in terms of, I mean, this is at the peak of the civil rights movement. Yeah. I mean, you have to imagine the sensitivities around that.
Right. Yeah. And that quote, it's not your story, it's my story.
Yeah. I mean, this is David's point, is like, there are things in here that are in the book that are just like not even true. Like even like timing of when certain people died. I mean, there's a real unreliable narrator thing.
And then there's the inability perhaps to trust people to narrate your story.
Yeah.
There's just always these two sides to the coin.
You add it all up and you're sort of, I can't believe she was successful given all of this, right? I can't believe she survived. Which I think is a pretty good segue into the next category, net worth. In this category, Maddie and I will each write down our numbers ahead of time. We'll then discuss our reasoning a little bit. We'll finally look up the net worth number in real time to see who's closest, and we will place this person on the Famous and Gravy net worth leaderboard.
This is a tough one for me. I don't know like what the right method is to try to get a guess at this. So the things that I thought about here are that she has a really long career. You know, many, many hit songs.
Whenever she shows up to a concert, people are going to attend. Like, she can sell out an arena.
She's going to sell out an arena. So that makes me think that this has to be on the high side of recording artists.
Yeah.
But what I wonder about is two things with her, though, is the era in which her career starts.
Yeah.
And are people making as much money then as they are in, say, the 90s and the 2000s and the 2010s?
Right. Is the revenue share in place?
Well, that's the other piece, right? It's the era and the way the industry was working at the time, where there's so many famous recording artists that went bankrupt because they were taken advantage of and they only got tiny revenue share. So I don't know what that was like for her. So there's that dynamic of the era, and did she fall victim to this insidious music industry that would just steal from artists, basically? So
I mean, I thought about those things a little bit in the research. It certainly comes out that there was accusations that she'd lost all her money. There came a point where people were like, Aretha, you need a business manager. And she was actually famous for having a bag of cash with her on the stage. That said, anytime she wanted to put on a performance, everybody was going to show up. You can't help but factor in, like, she would have made so much more money if she was on tour all the time, hopping on airplanes and tour buses.
Right.
And the fact that she even had a reputation of being flaky had to take a hit. So, all right, let's go ahead and reveal our numbers. Maddie Anderson wrote down 50 million.
And Tex, 20 million.
I love that you called me Tex. I think I'm Michael on this show.
You are Michael on this show, but you're always texting me.
All right. Aretha Franklin, net worth 10 million at the time of her death in 2018. That is a gross underperformance. She should have been closer to 50. I can't believe I was high with 20.
I know.
I think this does speak a little bit to the not great days there at the end. I don't know. She had some hits. I mean, there's that stupid song driving on the freeway. There's all those collaborations with George Michael and Annie Lennox. Yeah. And I mean, Tina got to 200 million, for Christ's sakes. But this is a surprisingly low number.
So this puts her at the low end of the leaderboard, I would imagine.
Yeah, this puts her tied at position 55. The other people with 10 million, this is the good news, is that she's in proud company. So, along with 10 million on the Famous and Gravy Net Worth leaderboard, we have Roger Ebert, John Prine, Margaret Thatcher, Florence Henderson, Steve Irwin, Maya Angelou, Louis Anderson, Leonard Cohen, Luke Perry, and Bill Russell. That's a hell of a dining table. So
that is a great dining table. Wow.
So there's Aretha Franklin. Wow. It should have been more, man. It should have been more. So, all right. Let's move on. Category 5, Little Lebowski Urban Achievers.
They're the Little Lebowski Urban Achievers.
Yeah, the Achievers.
Yes, and proud we are of all of them.
In this category, Maddie and I will each choose a trophy, an award, a cameo, an impersonation, or some other form of a hat tip that shows a different side of this person. I'll kick us off here. I can't believe we've gone this far into the episode without bringing up the Blues Brothers.
Yeah, good. Okay.
Yeah, I have to bring this up. This was actually probably my very first touch point with Aretha Franklin. When I was in 5th grade, my parents were having a party and they brought their kid over, this guy Colin, who I knew from school but didn't really like all that much. And they sent us to the video store to rent a movie. We grabbed Blues Brothers. We watched it. We both loved it. And Colin has been one of my best friends ever since. We bonded over the Blues Brothers. The scene in Blues Brothers where Aretha Franklin is playing the co-owner of a small restaurant in Chicago, and her man, Matt Guitar Murphy, is about to go on the road and leave her, and she sings Think to him.
Now you listen to me. I love you, but I'm the man and you're the woman, and I'll make the decision concerning my life.
You better think about what you're saying. You better think about the consequences of your actions.
Oh, shut up, woman.
So one thing to know is that she did, at times, have real ambitions to break into Hollywood. The whole thing about rock stars want to be actors and actors want to be rock stars. She claims she never got the good scripts. I think it also sort of like something we want from Aretha is to kind of represent strong woman fortitude, right? This is the one place where it's like also in the movies. It was perfect casting. So that's what I'm going with. That's my little.
And what did they order at the diner?
Help you, boys?
You got any white bread?
Yes.
I'll have some toasted white bread, please.
You want butter or jam on that toast, honey?
No, ma'am. Dry.
Got any fried chicken?
Best damn chicken in the state.
Bring me 4 fried chickens and a Coke.
You want chicken wings or chicken legs?
4 fried chickens and a Coke.
And some dry white toast, please.
So I did want to kind of play it straight down the line with achievements. Mm-hmm. But there's a lot of them to choose from, including the Presidential Medal of Freedom. I went to ChatGPT to ask it, what is the Presidential Medal of Freedom? And so it tells you what it is, but then it tells you the notable recipients of it. And this was literally the list. Nelson Mandela, Oprah Winfrey, Mother Teresa, Martin Luther King Jr., and Aretha Franklin.
That is incredible company. That's better than the net worth dining table.
Yeah.
Where she's sitting across from Steve Irwin. Yeah.
Right. So anyway, I just think we have to acknowledge that she was a recipient of that. Yeah. And that is the achievement of all achievements from an award.
Yeah.
at least in this country, I would say.
Yeah. I mean, and you're right. There's no shortage. First woman inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Well, that's what I actually wanted to that's my actual answer.
Oh,
I just
so
wanted to acknowledge the Medal of Freedom.
You're shoehorning in the Medal of Freedom, but you're actually going to go with the
First woman in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
Because I think there's a reason why I wanted to bring that one up, because when I was looking into this, she's the first woman. And then until this day, only 8% of inductees are women.
Yes.
Which is just like, I guess I'm not surprised by that.
But a crazy heavy male bias in rock and roll.
A male-dominated society, but also a heavily male-dominated industry that has limited opportunities for women, I think, from the beginning. And so 8%
it's limited opportunities, but I think it's also a discomfort with ascribing rock and roll like an identifier as a personality. That's what strikes me about that accomplishment is rock and roll, oftentimes represents rebelliousness and
but do you
independent
think limited
expression.
to masculinity then? And
no,
to
of course
being a
not.
man?
But that's the point, is that it's got this male bias.
That's
right?
how it.
And
right.
I think that she is not just one of
like
8%
Gwen
of women,
Stefani is
but
rock and roll.
Right. I mean, I think
But I don't think she's in the Hall of Fame.
No, and I think like this should be pointed out. I think this is a good case for why she deserves this award in this category. There are rock and roll qualities of Aretha Franklin, and if you don't see her through that lens, you're missing some of the picture.
Yeah, exactly. But I think the other reason I went with this one, because I think we have to acknowledge too in this episode about what does her life mean, is the influence that she had. So when you look at the contemporary pop artists and the greatest of this current era, many of them point to her as the number one influence. So you think about Adele and Beyonce and Alicia Keys and Whitney Houston and Lauryn Hill.
Great gowns, beautiful gowns.
And I wanted to bring up the Hall of Fame too, because I was looking into it. That's where I see this list of who she's influenced, including Lauryn Hill, who wrote for her "A Rose Is Still a Rose," that came out in 1998. That was the title track of the album. And I'll save this for later, I guess, but I think that song, written by Lauryn Hill, is an ode to the motherless daughter, to the goat against all odds. I think that song really encapsulates the legacy of what her life really means when you take it to that much more human, personal, early childhood experience, and how to persevere through that and how to see yourself and be seen through that. This is my interpretation anyway, but I think Lauryn Hill was able to see and acknowledge those things and write that song for who we don't always see Aretha as.
I really like that. She can be a symbol, Let's take another break.
So I just used NerdWallet's card finder tool to find a better card for me. And listeners, this is genius. All you have to do is answer a few questions, and in minutes, you'll get matched with recommendations tailored to you. I'm discovering cards I didn't even know existed, and the matching was on point. The best part? No research needed. The nerds already did that for us. So if you, like me, want to easily find the right card for you, go to nerdwallet.com to get matched today. Terms and conditions apply. Credit products subject to lender approval. See nerdwallet.com for details.
Ladies, is everyone trying to fix their health concerns with unproven gummies and tricks? Well, thank goodness, Low Libido has a real clinically proven treatment. Low libido can be so frustrating, but there is a treatment called Addyi, ADDYI. Addyi is the first and only FDA-approved pill proven to boost sexual desire in certain premenopausal women. Isn't that great? A clinically proven option for your low libido that comes from a doctor, not a gas station. Learn more at Addyi.com and take charge of your sexual health with a treatment that's backed by science. Remember, that's Addyi, ADDYI.com.
Addyi, or flibanserin, is for premenopausal women with acquired generalized hypoactive sexual desire disorder, HSDD, who have not had problems with low sexual desire in the past, who have low sexual desire no matter the type of sexual activity, the situation, or the sexual partner. The low sexual desire is troubling to them and is not due to a medical or mental health problem, problems in the relationship, or medicine or other drug use. Addyi is not for use in men or to enhance sexual performance. Your risk of severe low blood pressure and fainting is increased if you drink 1 to 2 standard alcoholic drinks close in time to your Addyi dose. Wait at least 2 hours after drinking before taking Addie at bedtime. Your risk of severe low blood pressure and fainting is also increased if you take certain prescriptions, over-the-counter or herbal medications, or have liver problems. Low blood pressure and fainting can happen when you take Addie, even if you don't drink alcohol or take other medicines. Do not take if you are allergic to any of the ingredients in Addie. Allergic reactions may include hives, itching, or trouble breathing. Sleepiness, sometimes serious, can occur. Common side effects include dizziness, nausea, tiredness, difficulty falling asleep or staying asleep, and dry mouth. See full PI and medication guide, including boxed warning, at addie.com/PI or call 844-PINK-PILL.
Addie. That's Addie. ADDYI.com.
Okay, category 6, words to live by. In this category, we each choose a quote. These are either words that came out of this person's mouth or was said about them. What do you have here?
Yeah, I'm just going to continue with the last category. So a rose is still a rose.
Okay.
And the opening lyrics of that song I'll read as the quote. And so it says, "Listen, dear, I realize that you've been hurt deeply because I've been there. Regardless to who, what, why, when, and where, we are all precious in his sight. And a rose still and always will be a rose." You know, what I take from that is there's just sort of like a truth that we all share, right? That we all want to be seen for who we truly are. We all want to be seen. We all want to know that we're valued. We all want to be loved and to love. And I think particularly this last line, "and a rose still always will be a rose in his sight." There's just the truth of, you know, at the end of the day, we're created, however we believe, right? The creator, the universe.
Yeah.
There's a soul within all of us, and it's what connects all of us. And there's nothing that can happen in our physical realm, the ego sort of realm of life. There's nothing that can happen that can touch the rose that is within us, that was created in his sight. And I think that, again, this is my interpretation. I love Lauryn Hill. And I think that she was writing this song to the rose within Aretha that she saw. I think it was a gift to her. And I think it's a gift to all of us as a reminder.
Damn, Maddie, that was good. You know, one thing I really love about you, man, one thing I'm really grateful for in our friendship is you're very good at reminding me that part of the spiritual path is looking for not just validation, but love. And that part of what complicates and confuses the human journey is that how we understand love, how it's communicated to us, that can get confusing and is imperfect. And to have a relationship with a higher power or something greater than you is to sort of have an open mind about how you are or are not experiencing love, not just validation, but love. And my theory on Aretha Franklin is that because she was a motherless daughter, because she was on a private jet to adulthood at a premature age, because she had a, father who represented certain things, many of which are good, some of which are complicated, that her ability to understand and experience love was hamstrung at an early age. And that's a lot to overcome, and I'm not sure she ever got there. If she did, and where she did, I see it in her music. Right. Yeah. And so that's my quote in Words to Live By. And I'll say this, I'm introducing this a little bit to make it about me.
Okay.
All right. She said, "Be your own artist and always be confident in what you're doing. If you're not going to be confident, you might as well not be doing it." There's a little bit of a twist on where the conversation has been thus far. One thing I said to you before the recording is that I may be at something of an inflection point with Famous and Gravy. I'm not sure where to take this show, and this show has been such an exciting part of my life, and I have found a lot of meaning and validation and importance and creativity. It has given me a vehicle to deepen my friendships. It has given me a kind of entry point into pop culture history and, dare I say, a spiritual pursuit. As you know, I don't know if I'm going to be able to keep the show going. I've been thinking a lot about creativity and how it is this, kind of roundabout way sometimes for helping you make sense of your own journey. That there's a spiritual component to creativity always for me. I like that Aretha is saying here, always be confident in what you're doing. Like, be sure of purpose. I don't see this as just like, be a good musician, be talented. I think confidence is a deeper idea here. It's actually selflessness. on some level. That's how I interpret this. And that one of the questions I have about the future of this show and my own creative journey, recognizing that this may not be the end of it. I don't think it would be. If Famous and Gravy goes away tomorrow, I don't think I'm done being creative. But I like the reminder that it should be a place of confidence. It's not confidence because you're good at it. It's confidence because you love yourself for having done it. That's what confidence is. It's about self-love on some level.
Yeah, 100%. So you've said this to me many times, that you should do podcasting as an act of self-love.
Yeah.
So let me say it this way, that it's not Famous and Gravy as an act of self-love. It's not podcasting as an act of self-love. It's creative expression as an act of self-love. That we create as an expression of our soul. And we create because we love ourselves and we love other people.
Yeah.
And when our soul is expressed, it's an expression of love. It's always an expression of love. So to say it another way, wherever you go next as a creative, it should be an expression of your soul. Again, this is interpretation, but I think Lauryn Hill wrote lyrics as an expression of self-love, as an expression of love for Aretha Franklin and what she's given to all of us, and an expression of the love that exists within us because of how we were created. We could take creativity, to a very deep and spiritual place, and I think we should. And I think what you're doing with this show is just the current iteration of your soul's expression.
I thank you for that. It's also, I think, kind of interesting to look at that through the prism of Aretha Franklin, who I see a tremendous amount of conflict, an internal conflict. And I think it's unmistakable. The closer you look, the deeper it goes.
Which is, I don't know if I'm allowed to do this, Tex, but that is like a good segue into category 7.
That's what I was going to say. You're absolutely right. Category 7, Man in the Mirror. This category is fairly simple. Did this person like their reflection? Yes or no? This is not about beauty, but rather a question of self-confidence versus self-judgment. She did have a problem with alcohol, among other things, and it didn't sound like she was a 12-step person. It sounds like she sort of white-knuckled her way into sobriety. I do think that there is something you can see there about the sort of void created inside the God-sized hole. I didn't have to think too much about this. I said no. I don't think she loves her reflection. Did you have a hot take here?
My answer was no.
Yeah. Because it's kind of obviously no, right?
I think so, but I think what I really want to say is I don't know.
Yeah, yes, but that's always true.
Always, of course. But,
yeah,
but not necessarily. Not necessarily. I think maybe in some episodes.
Well, okay. So what's the case for yes? I mean, is the case for yes as obvious as creative release, as whatever kind of ecstatic experience that came through music? Is that the case for yes?
I think so. I mean, she was gifted the greatest of all time voice, according to a lot of people, right? And it's a beautiful voice, and it's a powerful voice, and it's a soulful voice.
It's ranged like no others. It was there from the moment she opened her mouth, it seems like,
Right. And how could you not be in your room at the end of the day and looking yourself in the mirror and not love what you're seeing?
Into the mirror?
That's a good question. I don't think I've ever.
Let me just say, I sing in the shower. I sing in the car. I love singing. I do find a release in singing. I cannot sing in the mirror.
Right. And I think it's.
I don't think anybody could. I don't know. That sounds so awkward.
No, it is awkward, but I guess people probably do it to train.
I wonder. Yeah, it's a good question.
So,
I mean,
but I don't think she's singing in the mirror at the end of the day. I think she's looking herself in the figurative mirror at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And there's a part of me that says, how could she not love what she's seeing because of what she was gifted? And what is the meaning of life other than maybe to find the gift that you were given and then to express it? In other words, what we've been talking about just recently, like maybe the meaning of life is to meet your soul and to express it. And on some level, she's doing that.
Okay, I agree. And I want to respond to that, though. I think the mistake she makes is that she thinks it's only in the music. I think that is not one thing. I think that is subject to change. And even if you are a prodigy and even if you have a great gift, the fallacy that I think one can make, especially if you are a prodigy, perhaps, is that you think it is the art form, not necessarily the creative process more generally. There was an opportunity somewhere in Aretha Franklin's life, perhaps, and this is a lot to ask of her, so I don't say this with judgment, but to give back, and to give back in a different kind of way. And I do think she is trapped in the bondage of self, to borrow a phrase from the 12 Steps. Ultimately, this is a no. She didn't like her reflection in the mirror.
I mean, I suppose I was just making the case for yes, which I do think there is a case for yes.
Yeah.
And then for me, the no side of this coin is this diva persona.
Yeah.
Is that who she is?
I think so, but it's not. It's understandable. It's relatable. It makes sense. You look at the facts of her life and how she got to
But is it also a facade to protect her insecurity?
Of course it is.
Which means maybe she's not confident at the end. You know what I mean? Like maybe there is a lot of self-doubt and lack of confidence, and that this facade is to make up for that.
And that she feels the facade is necessary. It's an important facade.
Is it a self-protectionist sort of?
Exactly.
So yeah, I mean, it's sort of true to form for this conversation of there's two sides to this particular category, and it's hard to, you never know, yes, but I think more than most, this is like, I don't know, but I think I would probably go no.
Oh, you're bringing a lot of compassion and love, but we both landed on no. So let's move on. The next category, coffee, cocktail, or cannabis. This is where we ask which one would we most want to do with our dead celebrity. Mm-hmm. This one was hard, man. I totally copped out here. I'm going cannabis because, like, the challenge I feel like I'm dealing with Aretha Franklin is that I see the musical heights, but it's hard for me to see more to her outside of music. And part of me feels like what I want to do is experience that firsthand, probably while high, because and this is probably my own arrogance, but there is a theory I have that the closer I can get to somebody else's creativity and describe the experience I'm having in relation to their art, if I'm able to describe that back to them with a certain level of articulation and specificity, it opens the door for a broader conversation. If you read the David Ritz book, one thing that's really striking is I think he's frustrated with her for not doing more gospel, not doing more soul music, for chasing hits in the 80s when she's looking for relevance. And one of the things she struggles with is because she is, to go back to the first line of the obituary, great in all types and all forms and all genres, I think it creates a sense of confusion for where does she belong. And I feel like if you can help her with that, then you can understand something about this deeper creative process that we've been talking about all along. So, cannabis.
I like it. And so the chasing hits point that you made sort of gets at where I went with this.
Okay.
So I went with coffee. The scene that I'm going to set is that we're having a conversation the morning of January 4th, 1987. And this is the morning after she's inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So she must be that next morning. So the night of, probably is on a high and, just enjoying the moment. And here I am, I made it, I'm the first woman, all these sort of things. And now it's the next morning. And, once you reach big achievements, big milestones, there's you feel so great in the moment. And then literally the next day you're like, okay, this doesn't feel great anymore.
The dopamine's gone, yeah.
Yeah, it's all gone. It's like, well, now I'm just me again, and I'm just here I am.
Yeah.
So I want to be in that headspace with her in that morning, having a cup of coffee. I want to ask her, did you make music for yourself, or did you make music for the audience? And that's what I'm curious about. And I want to ask it in my Rick Rubin voice.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Oh, say more about what you mean by that with your Rick
so the Rick Rubin voice. So if you hear interviews with Rick Rubin, or, he came out with the book, The Creative Act, the subtitle of The Creative Act is A Way of Being. So he talks a lot about being, again, sort of singular in your creative expression. Whatever you're creating is only for you. That's the truest way to express what has been gifted to you. And as soon as you start chasing the hits or chasing the audience, it's taking you out of being the singular expression of who you are. It's no longer a way of being. It's a way of chasing. It's a way of searching. And I'm curious where she was with that. Were you doing this for you, or were you doing this for the audience? And how do you answer that? How do you kind of grapple with that?
It does feel like that message never quite sank in for her, but look how far she went. Look what she overcame. Look what she was up against, and look where she took it. Which, brings us to the last category. Category 9, the Vanderbeek. Named after James Vanderbeek, who famously said in Varsity Blues,
I don't want your life.
In that Varsity Blues scene, James makes a judgment that he does not want a certain kind of life based on just a few characteristics. So here, Maddie and I will form a rebuttal to anyone skeptical of how Aretha Franklin lived. I don't know how much I need to summarize the counter-argument points here. We've kind of hit it pretty hard. That there was a lot of trauma at a young age. There was internal conflicts between the story she wanted to tell about herself and the story that she actually experienced. There's a fair amount of solitude late in life. And I do think that there's a complicated set of interpersonal relationships that are understandable, but nevertheless hard. So I can understand where Mr. Vanderbeek is coming from when he says, I don't want your life, Aretha. What is the argument for wanting this life, Maddie? Where would you start?
I think the starting point is this is a once in a lifetime, once in a generation life experience. And so if you kind of walk through a little bit of her biography, you start with like her early childhood and who her father was in the community, in the church, in the civil rights movement. I mean, Martin Luther King Jr. is at her house as she's growing up.
Yeah.
All the civil rights movement
As Sam Cooke's on his way
like,
out the door. Yeah.
Yeah, and then his not only civil rights movement, but her dad was a figure in the gospel and soul music worlds too. And so Sam Cooke, before he becomes Sam Cooke, is hanging out.
Yeah.
And like Aretha and Sam Cooke are friends, and Mahalia Jackson and Whitney Houston.
Yeah,
and like
Cecilia Houston, Whitney's mother. I mean, all these people.
Yeah. From day one, this is what she got to experience. These are history book figures and tales.
This is participating in life, right? This is participating in culture and the shaping of cultures and societies and a pivotal moment in American history.
Yeah, I want to be there.
Yeah.
I want to be in those rooms.
Yeah.
I want to be at those dinner tables. I want to meet those people. And she got to experience that.
Just the journey.
Just the journey of even before she turned 18 and then, had a record deal. She sang the greatest song of all time, according to the Rolling Stone magazine. Like
that was going to be my number 2, that regardless of creative intent, to have a song that resonates and that inspires people. Like, I don't know how much she was able to feel that love coming back or how much she was able to take it in, but to have this piece of art that is such a foundation for identity for African Americans, for women, for people who have felt otherwise screwed over by society. What a thing.
We stand on the shoulders of greatness. She lifted a lot of people up and people acknowledge her for that. That's a good feeling. That's a good life. She changed the world. And then maybe on a much more deeper, if we take this to a deeper sort of meaning of life place.
Yeah.
What is the meaning of life? I don't know. We don't know. But it must include discovering who we were meant to be, discovering our gift, discovering what was anointed, right? Finding our relationship to our soul and our ability to express our soul. She did that.
Yeah.
Her ability to connect with an audience through her voice and her performance.
Well, we're always going to be a little bit insatiable on some level. And, when I talk about the God-sized hole, I mean, this was the last point I was going to make on this. This whole, carried the church with her. I do think that while there are some signs of solitude and isolation in her life, whatever you make of it, the God idea existed in her. And the experience of it was there. And that she may have felt more proximate or distant to it at different times, but it's in there. And while I wouldn't make a strong case for an upward staircase, it's inarguable that there's a deeper idea present in her that found expression at times, which I think is basically your point, spiritual journey.
Yeah.
Well, okay, let's summarize. So number 1, that she got to participate in history. Number 2, I think the inspiration and the impact and the legacy. And number 3, I think, however imperfectly, a connection with your soul and maybe a connection with the higher power. So with that, James Vanderbeek, I'm Aretha Franklin, and you want my life. Okay, speed round. Plugs for past shows. Maddie, if you enjoyed this episode of Aretha Franklin, what's another episode you think listeners might enjoy?
The one that first came to mind actually kind of connects to this two sides of the coin type conversation we've been having here. It's Big Adventurer, Paul Reubens.
Ah, love it.
Pee-wee Herman. I love Pee-wee Herman. Also a complicated life and a complicated person. There's a lot to love about Aretha Franklin, and it's a complicated story.
Okay. Episode number 90, Big Adventurer, Paul Reubens, Pee-wee Herman. I'm going to go ahead and plug our Muhammad Ali episode 31, The Greatest, Muhammad Ali. There is such a travel through history and through this pivotal moment in history, and the way pop culture, and in that case sports, can come to represent and symbolize other things going on in society. So if you enjoyed this conversation about Aretha Franklin, you might enjoy the episode about Muhammad Ali.
Who might just be the goat of goats.
Who might just be the goat of goats, indeed, to your goat point. All right, here is a little preview for the next episode of Famous and Gravy. He was a genuine star, but as an actor, something of a paradox. A lantern-jawed, brawny athlete whose physical appeal was both enhanced and undercut by a disarming wit.
Arnold Schwarzenegger? No, he's alive.
Arnold Schwarzenegger is still with us. Famous and Gravy listeners, we love hearing from you. If you want to reach out with a comment, question, or to participate in our opening quiz, email us at hello@famousandgravy.com, and you will hear back from us. In the show notes, we include all kinds of links, including to our website and our social channels. Famous and Gravy is created by me, Michael Osborne, and Amit Kapoor. Thank you so much to my friend Maddie Anderson for joining us on this episode. Maddie is currently running the Imagination Factory, where dreams become reality. This is for people who are working in human services who want their values to align with their work. We will link to it in the show notes. This episode was produced by Allie Arrazola, original music by Kevin Strang. Thanks so much, and see you next time. Follow Famous and Gravy on the Wondery app. You can listen to more episodes early and ad-free right now by joining Wondery Plus in the Wondery app, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify. Before you go, tell us about yourself by completing a short survey at Wondery.com/survey.
You know where your business would be without you. Imagine where it could go with more of you. Well, with Wix, you can create a website with more of your vision, your voice, your expertise. Wix gives you the freedom to truly own your brand and do it on your own, with full customization and advanced AI tools that help turn your ideas into reality. Scale up without being held back by cookie-cutter solutions and grow your business into your online brand. Because without you, your business is just business as usual. Take control. Go to Wix.com.